This is our new podcast. We have hit the millennial dream, and we
doing our millennial duty.
And it's called Caffeinated Flicks. My name is Mackenzie Lowen.
I'm Celeste Garcia.
We want to recap movies by diverse directors, and this can be people of color, women, people in the LGBTQ community, and beyond.
We're not like film majors or anything like that. We're just regular gals that just like movies and like talking.
Yes. So the first thing that we plan to do is talk about our coffee intake or our caffeine intake.
Our caffeine addiction.
Yes, our main line of caffeine. Part of that is because Celeste and I met 7 years ago, I think, when we both worked at Starbucks as baristas.
Yes, and it turned out we were both vegetarians at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of bonded over that. But yeah, we met at the famous Starbucks.
So tell me more about the coffee that you got today, Celeste.
Today I got a venti iced coffee. My typical Starbucks order is either a chai or a matcha. But it was free today, so.
Why was it free?
You know how they changed their point system?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now you can get a free iced coffee for $100. So I got blonde espresso in it. I got some cinnamon dolce.
You're getting fancy over there.
I know, I did. I'm like, I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to make this an expensive drink because I'm on the
I mean, that's what everybody used to do. Remember when, I can't remember who did it, but somebody came through and ordered like 20 shots in a venti cup with like minimal ice, and that was their free drink.
Oh, yeah. And also, like, I forgot what I was going to say. I had remembered something from Starbucks, and then it completely left my mind. So, oh, but what did you get today? I know you don't have it right now, but this morning.
Yeah. So this morning I went to Modern Grind, which is another drive-through coffee establishment, and I got a CBD nitro cold brew, just black. I decided I just wanted something black today.
You're good at that. I can never do black. There's two kinds of people in the world. Those that can take the black, and those who like just a hint of coffee with their creamer.
Yeah. Well, some of it stemmed from, so last night we went to Santan Brewing and Distillery, and at the distillery, they had what they call black stills, and it's a coffee rum. And my goodness, you could barely taste the rum in there. It just tasted purely of coffee, and it was amazing. And so I woke up this morning and I was like, I want more coffee.
Oh my gosh. Ooh.
It was so good. Highly recommend.
To try it. And then the place that you went to this morning, is that a chain or is that a local place? I've never heard of it.
I'm pretty sure it's a chain because they are part of like a reward system and stuff. And most local places don't have the like integrated app or anything of that nature, but we'll see. Who knows? So cool. Should we break into our movie today?
Yes. And the first one is by M. Night himself, Signs.
So tell me, when did you first watch Signs? What impact did it have on you?
I don't remember the first time, but I was a child. I'm pretty sure my mom made me watch it. My mom had a huge influence on the movies I watched. So I'm pretty sure she's the one that made me watch it. But I mean, it was terrifying. I mean, watching it now, I don't feel like it has the same impact, but back then, oh my gosh, like, I don't know, but the classic, the revealing in Brazil when you first see the alien, oh my gosh. That was literally terrifying. I think traumatized a lot of millennials. So,
I think so.
It has a stellar cast. And so, yeah, it's just a good old classic film.
Yep. I could not agree more. I remember I also saw it as a kid, but it quickly became my favorite movie. All I did was watch it nonstop in my room. And I think part of it was because my brother Morgan, who's like a year younger than I am, he was so scared of it. And I think part of it is because one of the characters' names is Morgan. And so if I wanted him to get out of my room, I was just like, here, I'm putting on Signs. So do you feel like this is a long movie or a short movie?
I feel like it goes by really fast. I was watching it and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm already almost done watching it. I guess with credits, it would probably run more like at an hour and a half, but still, it goes by so quickly. So
Right. Would agree with that. It's just very like quick paced. And what shocks me is like the genre. There's no one genre for this.
Oh yeah.
It's a drama, mystery, sci-fi, and thriller.
Yep. With some comedy in it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Some of the lines are just hilarious. But yeah, as you mentioned earlier, it's got an all-star cast. We've got Mel Gibson, Abigail Breslin, Joaquin Phoenix, Rory Culkin. And those are probably the most well-known individuals besides M. Night himself. So
I guess technically you could say maybe this film launched Abigail's career since it was her very first role.
Yeah, absolutely.
First role. How amazing to say that was your first work as an actor.
And she was so cute.
Oh my God, she was so adorable.
It's part of what launched my like Abigail Breslin fandom.
Oh, really?
Yes. Like I said, I was obsessed with this movie. Like,
so then you followed all the actors and
mostly just Abigail Breslin. Like,
yeah. Oh, just her?
Yes, just Abigail Breslin. I think this is actually my first M. Night movie too. So,
I don't remember if this is his first movie that I watched.
Oh, this was the first movie I watched. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Do we want to get into ratings?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. You want to introduce it?
Alrighty. So we're going to go over some ratings. We've chose IMDb rating, and we're going to go ahead and look into 10 out of 10 and then 1 out of 10. And then we're going to go ahead and say which one we agree with more. Do you want to go into it, Kenzie?
Sure. Let's do it. So I will read the 10 out of 10 and then you can read the 1 out of 10.
Sounds good.
Cool. So the 10 out of 10 rating says, this is an iconic American film that is way underrated and overslandered. The writing in this is Oscar worthy, and so are the performances. Gibson was perfect portraying a man battling his inner demons after the passing of his wife. This may be his all-time best performance. Joaquin Phoenix is a superstar, period. While Culkin looks at him and says, I wish you were my father. And Phoenix ripped that line. Don't you ever say that again. Masterpiece. The chemistry between the cast, top to bottom, was so good. The pace of the alien invasion was well done and allowed time for the passing of the mother storyline, which is so good. The final concluding scene wrapped up the movie perfect. 10 out of 10.
The 1 out of 10 rating is, or says, is it possible that there are no coincidences? Give me a break. This cannot possibly be a premise for a science fiction movie that's just preposterous. I like MN's topic for movies, and there's no doubt that he is a very skilled director of both people and cameras. Sixth Sense was extremely clever and very frightening. Unbreakable was one of the first movies to take comics seriously and was also very clearly written. This had the potential to be a new E.T. or some other kind of clever science fiction, and instead we got this god-awful, pun intended, sermon that's supposed to tell mankind that everything is precedented. Why? Ooh, that was harsh.
Very. So next we'll go into the recap, and then at the end we will decide whether or not we agree with the 10 out of 10 more or the 1 out of 10.
Let's do it.
All right. For the movie, we open on our title sequence, which is very intense and is just a blue screen that has all the different names and titles on it. After the title sequence, we open looking over a yard that from the second floor of a farmhouse, which we will see the shot over and over and over again. And we will learn that this is 45 miles outside of Philly. The yard has a swing set and a slide set and is surrounded by a cornfield. The viewpoint transitions to inside the house, looking at a family picture on a nightstand. And then all of a sudden we have Mel Gibson's face. We have no idea why he got up. Like, there's no noise. There's nothing. He just sits straight up out of bed. So Mel Gibson plays Graham Hess. And then he gets up, walks into the hallway, and there's a child's door at the other end of the hallway. He stands, he looks at it, he changes his mind, and he walks back to the bathroom. This is that iconic scene in Scary Movie 3 where he goes into the bathroom, and in Scary Movie 3, what's his name?
Sheen.
Charlie Sheen is peeing, and then it stops every so often with the screaming in between. So Mel Gibson goes into the bathroom, but he's brushing his teeth. And then all of a sudden we hear a little girl scream. And what cracks me up about this is his face is so calm the entire time. And you just...
That's him throughout the whole movie.
I know. It's wild.
Like, how chill he is. Yeah, we can.
He's basically just stone faced, and I'm pretty sure that I do not agree with this acting choice.
Yeah, he no expressions, even though he played it well. There were no expressions, no urgency.
Yeah, absolutely no concern at all for what's happening in this movie. So as he leans back into the frame from the door frame, all of a sudden we have a scene change, and we see Joaquin Phoenix lying face down on a bed. And then we hear another scream, and it could potentially be the same scream. And then all of a sudden Joaquin Phoenix literally flips out of bed. Like, he just launches into the air.
The complete opposite of Mel Gibson's character.
He's so panicked. He's looking around. He's like, what's happening?
I remember watching that. I'm like, this guy's extra.
Right? Oh my gosh. I think Joaquin Phoenix had to, though, to just completely counter Mel Gibson in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah, that was probably intentional for sure.
So then we see Graham and Joaquin Phoenix's character, Meryl Hess, meet in the front yard that we were just looking at, and they hear another scream. So all of a sudden they just dart straight into the corn. You hear a scream, and your initial instinct is to dart into corn. I don't know about you. I saw Children of the Corn when I was younger. No, thank you. No, thank you. There's no way you can get me into corn.
Unfortunately, I never saw that.
Yes. Count yourself lucky. So as they're running through stalks and stalks of corn, they find a little baby Abigail Breslin, who was only 5 years old during this.
So wild.
So she's playing a character named Bo Hess, and they find her in a row of the cornfield. And even though she's the one who's been screaming, she apparently thinks that she's been dreaming. And that's when we find out that Graham is her dad. Graham and Meryl see Rory Culkin, who plays Morgan Hess, and Graham heads to him. Morgan says to Graham, "I think God did it." And Mel Gibson they're not even looking around. They just like staring straight into the faces of these children. Mm-hmm. And then Morgan takes his dad's face and turns it to the camera, and everybody starts walking to this crop circle that has been flattened down in the middle of their cornfield. And we start to zoom out over the crop circle so we can see the entire design. Once again, we have a scene change. Very quick. Graham is back inside the house. He's talking on the phone, but we have no idea who he's talking to, and we never find out. And did you clock how he's holding this phone?
No, he wasn't talking to the one sheriff?
No, because she's at the door the next moment.
Oh. No, are we sure it wasn't a scene change? Because he's like, "Oh, I only called you folks like 2 hours ago," or something like that. I thought he was like talking to her. Or maybe
Nope.
it was a neighbor. Okay.
He had to be talking to somebody else, but he's holding the bottom of the phone, like old school house phones that were uncorded. He's holding the bottom of the phone where the microphone would be. And I'm like, that's not how you hold a phone, sir.
It's been so long, I don't remember.
So as soon as he's done with this mysterious phone call, he turns around and he sees Bo and Morgan in the kitchen. And they've got a German Shepherd named Houdini. And there's a puddle in between them, insinuating that the dog had an accident. And then they decide that Houdini must be sick. Graham tells the kids to take the dog outside and that he'll call one of the doctors in the town. And Morgan's like, he's not a vet. He's like, no, it's fine. He knows what to do.
We'll be fine.
And then
different.
What cracks me up about this is all of a sudden, Graham, Mel Gibson's character, has an oven mitt on one hand, and he goes and he gets paper towels with his other hand that doesn't have an oven mitt on it. And he starts cleaning up the floor with paper towels and does a very poor job of doing it.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I'm like, he's not using those paper towels properly. I noticed that too. I'm like, that's wasteful.
It was 2002, you know? So that's when he hears something at the front door, and he goes to the front door and finds Sheriff Carolyn Paskey. And what I love about Caroline is that every time we see her, she's got an incredible story.
She has some far-fetched, like bizarro like story to tell.
She truly does.
With a straight face too.
Oh, I know. I don't know how she does it. This first one, she says that one of the older women in the town is very upset about the skateboarders, about boys skateboarding on the sidewalk, and she broke her hip. So she goes into a store and starts spitting on everything.
Spitting.
Oh, so finally she inquires about the crops, and that's the reason why she's there. So all of a sudden we have another scene change. And we see somebody grilling chicken outside with a grill fork, and we pan up and it's Morgan. Morgan is like 10 or 12. Like, he is not very old, and he is by himself grilling chicken. I cannot fathom why this is happening. So he walks up to Bo, who's sitting on the ground with Houdini, and we get the first instance where she thinks that the water is contaminated. So she drinks this water and she says it's contaminated. Morgan takes a sip out of it and he's like, it's fine. And she says that she won't drink it. So he tells her to put it in the dog bowl. And as soon as she does, and she starts to put it closer to Houdini, Houdini starts to bark and growl at her. The scene becomes very tense. All of a sudden, we're back with Graham and Caroline in the middle of the crop circle. This is where Caroline tells us that all of the animals in the area are acting weird. And we get the first instance that somebody calls Graham father, and who's not his children.
Yeah.
So they're talking about the crop circle, and then he stands up and there's a tense moment. Not that we know it from Mel Gibson's face, because it doesn't change. But
I know you.
He tells Caroline. What?
Was that her name? Kristen Stewart?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's the original, the OG Kristen Stewart. She asks him what's wrong, and he's like, I can't hear my children.
Oh, gosh.
The two of them get back to the yard, and they're met with a grisly scene where Houdini has been skewered by previously said grill fork.
Poor Houdini.
I know. This is also where we find out that Morgan is asthmatic and he's using an inhaler. And he tells both of them that Houdini tried to kill Bo, who's sitting on top of the slide set, just stone, not moving at all. And Graham comes to the other side of Houdini, puts his hand out to Morgan, and he tries to get him to walk around Houdini's unfortunate corpse at this time. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And then Morgan just storms off.
Morgan annoys me.
I know. He's that precocious, like, child trope, you know?
Yes. Played it very well.
He's like a 27-year-old in an 11-year-old's body.
He is, isn't he?
So then Graham goes and he picks up Bo from the slide, and the three of them go inside. And then all of a sudden, Meryl shows up. Like, he has been absolutely nowhere during all of this. And Graham is very upset with him. And he tells him to go tie up the other German Shepherd, whose name is Isabel, to the back of the shed.
I love how he doesn't even explain what just happened.
Right.
And the fact that there's a skewer in their dog right now. He's just supposed to. Just like, he's not even going to say anything to him. He's just go tie up the other dog.
Oh my gosh. And then the worst part is, like, Caroline is still just like sitting by Houdini and then pulls the fork out. And I'm like, good Lord. So all of a sudden it's nighttime. And once again, we suddenly see Mel Gibson's face again. He wakes from a dead sleep and is just like, what's the matter?
A lot of close-ups of Mel Gibson's face.
All of a sudden we see Bo. Bo's standing next to his bed. And what cracks me up is she says this in the absolute calmest way possible.
She does. And I remember that terrified me.
Right. Do you want to say the line?
There's a monster outside my window. Can I get a glass of water?
Yes. She says it just like that.
Just like.
And then, of course, Graham could care absolutely less about the monster. He's just very concerned about the fact that she wants a new glass of water. He's like, what happened to the one next to your bed? And she's like, it's contaminated. So he takes her back to her bed, and we find out that she shares a room with Morgan, and he gets Morgan back onto his bed because he seems to be falling off. And they have a very intense conversation about her mom. And at this point in time, we don't know that she's died yet. And it's kind of vague, like she could just be gone. But she asks him, like, why do you only talk to mom when you're by yourself? And he says, it makes me feel better. And she asks him, does she ever talk back? And he doesn't answer. And so she says, she never answers me either. That's the premise of that conversation. And then suddenly Graham takes his focus off of his daughter, looks up at the window that's just past her, and sees a humanoid silhouette on top of the roof, and still is very stone-faced about this. Yep. All of a sudden, we focus in on Meryl's face. He's fallen asleep in an armchair, and Graham shakes him awake. He thinks that Lionel Richardson and the Wolfington brothers are the ones who are wreaking havoc on them.
Like, just casually jumping on their roof. What?
Right. So we see the two right in front of the front door, and they're getting ready to attack, and they're talking about the plan and how they're going to intimidate these individuals. Meryl's like, you got to act crazy, cuss and yell and scream. And Graham's biggest concern is the fact that he can't cuss.
He doesn't cuss.
So they decide on the count of 3, they're going to head out the door, and all of a sudden they book it out that door, each one of them running in opposite directions to meet on the same side of the house again. So that way they hope that they've cornered these villains that they have. And then by the time that they meet up at the front, their culprit is still a mystery. They have no idea who this person is. They haven't seen them. But all of a sudden they hear somebody launch onto the roof. And then from the roof, they jump off through the swing set and back into the corn. And they just kind of stand there dumbfounded.
Like, okay, I guess it's not the Wolfington brothers.
No, they don't think it's not the Wolfington brothers, which is the most insane thing.
Wait, it's not. Wait, they continue thinking that?
Yes.
That was implied?
Yes, they still think that.
Oh, God.
Yep. So we changed scenes again, and Caroline is back at the house. She's sitting at the dining room table with Morgan, and she's talking about walkie-talkies because he's just infatuated with her walkie-talkie. And she says that if he's got an old baby monitor, he can use it as a one-way walkie-talkie, which sounds like a pointless walkie-talkie. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, because why?
Then Caroline starts talking to Meryl. This is where we find out that he works at the gas station. And she says, it was so nice of you to move in with Graham after everything. And then we start hearing very loud noises coming from the living room. And we find out that Bo is watching Dexter's Laboratory. So Graham goes back into the living room and asks her to turn it down. And then he starts to quiz her about all the different glasses of water she has gotten out.
How do you have so many glasses?
I know. Like, I swear, I have like 3 glasses out and I've lost half my glasses.
Yeah, exactly. I think I have maybe like 10 max.
So all of a sudden he's like, what's wrong with this one? And she's like, there's a speck of dust in it. What's wrong with this one? It's contaminated. What's wrong with this one? Morgan took a sip out of it and now it has his amoebas in it. That one is my favorite line. Then he kind of gives up. He heads to a different room, sees that she has another 3 glasses on a different end table, turns around, sees that she's got like another 5 glasses, I think on their piano or something like that. And he just puts them all down and just gets back to the table.
There's just no point.
Nope, he's given up. So Caroline is going over their statements, their witness statements. And she's like, so far, all I have here is it was very dark. And then Meryl's like, it was very dark.
Yeah, they just continue saying that basically. They just fall back on it was very dark.
Yeah, it was very dark. Then she's like, well, I don't know who I'm looking for. I don't know if this guy is a short guy, a tall guy, what color is his skin? I got nothing. And then they start talking about the potential of it being a woman too. This is where she comes in with some more stories. She's like, there are these Scandinavian Olympic women who can jump clear over my head.
Like, the most absurd things come out of this woman's mouth. It's hilarious.
It's fantastic. So then, of course, Meryl gets snarky with her. And they're just like, we don't know what's happening. So ultimately, they have absolutely no idea who it is or who it could be. And then Bo comes back into the dining room area and she says that she can't find the remote. And Graham's like, well, why don't you just change the channel on the TV? And she says, but the same thing is being shown on every channel. The whole family goes into the living room and there's a new news broadcast of crop circles being shown from all over the world, but they're specifically showing what's happening in India. After this, Carol suggests that the family drive into town, have a normal day, get away from all of this. And so they do. As soon as they get to town, everybody goes in separate locations.
Like, what I found so crazy and almost unbelievable is if something was broadcasting on every single station to imply that there's some sort of extraterrestrial beings out there. Like, can you imagine the mayhem that would break out?
No.
People would lose their minds. And the fact that they go into town and everything's normal, there would be looters. There would be people just going that crazy. And it just went on nothing.
Right.
No big.
It's just a big hoax.
Exactly. I just found that so wild, but yeah.
Oh, well, now, since, the White House and our government has recognized that UFOs exist, maybe it would have been taken seriously. Who knows?
Who knows?
So anyway, Morgan and Bo go off to a bookstore. Graham goes to the pharmacy and Meryl goes to an army recruitment office. While Morgan and Bo are inside the bookstore, the store owners are watching the news. The older gentleman who's in this store is convinced that this is all a conspiracy to sell soda.
13.
Then Morgan wants to get a book on aliens. So he asks for a book on aliens. He goes and he finds one and he's sitting there flipping through it. And the woman who owns the bookstore gives Bo a glass of water. And of course, in proper Bo fashion, she's like, this water's contaminated. The woman, she is like, hey, there's something wrong with our water. And Morgan's like, no, there's nothing wrong with your water. It's fine. It's just a tick she has.
What I also would like to know is how is she not dehydrated?
Oh my gosh, right?
She can't drink water? How is she alive?
And she doesn't seem to drink anything else either.
Yeah.
So while Graham is in the pharmacy, he's picking up Morgan's inhaler prescription, and the pharmacist is a local woman whose name is Tracy. And she is just overcome with anxiety and just needs to confess her conscience to Graham. And she keeps referring to him as father. She just keeps saying, Father, Father, I need to confess my sins. I need to tell you my conscience. Will you hear me, Father?
Conscience.
And then he's like, I haven't been to church in 6 months. She's like, but I just need somebody's help.
Yes.
So then she basically, what it is back to the swearing thing. She apparently sweared like 47 times. And then she asks if bastard is a sin. And he says, depends on the context. And she gives him an example. And he's like, well, yes, that would be it. And she's like, it's not 47, then it's 71 or something, some outrageous number.
Meanwhile, there's like this massive line for the pharmacy.
Yes. People are looking over his shoulder.
These poor people just trying to get their meds.
Right.
Crazy woman.
Oh. So then we switch to Merrill in the Army recruitment office. And he's looking at these brochures, and there's SFC Cunningham, and he's explaining that the aliens are using different military strategies, and he's saying all this military jargon. And then all of a sudden, Merrill turns around, and Cunningham recognizes him. And he's like, didn't you used to play for the minor leagues? And Merrill just very small does a little nod. And then we have some hilariously cringy banter that occurs here.
Ew. So gross. So cringy. Like, thought of it.
I don't know. It's one of those moments that you just have to laugh to keep from crying, because Cunningham is like, you were great. Why aren't you in the major leagues getting your toes licked by beautiful women or something like that?
What?
Then Merrill says, he's got 2 of the home run records for the minor leagues. And then all of a sudden we hear a disembodied voice, and we find out that it's Lionel Richardson. And he says, what people don't know is that he's got the highest strikeout record ever. Mm. He'll just swing that bat as hard as he can, even if it's to nothing.
Mm-hmm. So the reason why, because he then proceeds to say that it felt wrong not to swing. Mm-hmm. I thought at first that it was because Graham had told him that his late wife, like one of the last things she said was swing away Merrill. I thought he knew that. No. And then I thought that's why he would constantly swing. And I used to think it was so sweet and sad. But then just recently I learned, oh no, he just sucked.
Yep, he just sucked.
Pretty much.
So eventually they all meet up at this pizza store. And apparently there's only one table in this pizza shop, and it's located directly in the front door.
Yes, very convenient.
Graham shows up and he's like, we are never speaking to Tracy ever again. No explanation. All of a sudden, everybody starts staring at the door, and they're all fixated on a person. And we turn around and we see M. Night. He's entered his movie.
Yes.
So they all stare at him, and Morgan asks, is that him? And there's really no answer. We just all kind of know that he's a very important person to them. And then he just drives off in his SUV. Mm-hmm. Suddenly we have a scene change again. The family has returned home, and after parking, somehow Morgan has his baby monitor, and it's producing some annoying static. He thinks that there's some conversation happening over this static. And Merrill tells Morgan, all this alien stuff is created by nerds that can't get girlfriends. And then Bo asks one of my favorite lines, why can't they get girlfriends? And of course, nobody ever answers her.
Poor girl.
As soon as they get out of the car, the baby monitor starts to produce some high pitched static and some clicks and something that's reminiscent of whale calls. And then instead of turning it off, Morgan says that the baby monitor has to go higher in order to get clearer. So he gets on top of the car, and Merrill holds him up. Bo tries to get on top of the car. Graham is not having it. And we have this intense moment where Morgan's got his hand in the sky. We're listening to some clicks going back and forth, and all of a sudden it all cuts out and we've just got like white noise.
Yep.
Once again, scene change, and it's nighttime. Graham is outside. He is trying to feed Isabel because she's tied up to the shed, but she will not stop barking at the cornfield. He's like, Isabel, you're going to feel very silly about this when this is all over. Poor Isabel. Foreshadowing. Poor Isabel. So Graham, he decides he's going to go and investigate. He grabs a flashlight and he goes straight into the cornfield. Once again, back into the cornfield. He walks around a bit. He gets to the crop circle and he shouts at whoever's there that they're not going to get famous because he's not going to report this to anybody. And then as he's walking back, he hears a set of clicks rush up behind him and he drops the flashlight. As soon as he starts banging on it to get it to work again, he points it around the corn stalks, and all of a sudden he sees a grayish blue humanoid leg sticking out of the corn, and he just books it.
Like at that point, if you like visually, you have a visual that there's something out there, how are you like not at this point, okay, we're leaving?
Right.
Like how are you not taking your family and running? Like it's yeah. Again,
he at least has like the point of mind to say, it's okay, we can turn on the news now as soon as he gets back inside. So then the news broadcast is explaining that UFOs have invaded the Mexico skies, and that this is when Morgan decides he's going to go grab a VHS tape, and because he wants to tape it. And then Bo is like, my ballet recital, and she will not give up this videotape. So he goes and he just grabs a different one. And then him and the news all agree that everything we've learned in science books will be changed forever.
And then they recorded over, what did they record over? Meryl's swimsuit competition.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah. I'm like, I wish we saw like a glimpse of that.
Right? That would have been great. So later on in the evening, Graham and Meryl are just sitting basically in the dark on this couch with a kid sleeping on each of them. So then Meryl and Graham start to discuss what's happening. And Graham tells Meryl that there are two different types of people in this world. This is where they start to have a philosophy discussion. Those who feel lucky and those who believe in coincidences. And this is where we learn about Graham's late wife's last words that you spoke about earlier. Mm-hmm. Because Graham tells Meryl, when I was talking to her, she must have been hallucinating. The synapses in her brain were going off, and she was thinking about one of the games that we saw, and she just said, swing away, Meryl. That's when we have a flashback, and Graham is driving his truck down a very dark road at night, and Caroline flags him down. He heard that there was an accident and that Ray fell asleep at the wheel. Colleen, who was his wife, we got a name now, is awake, but she's not in an ambulance. And Graham is just beside himself. He doesn't understand why. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then all of a sudden, Graham wakes up on the couch. He's fallen asleep and he's the only one left. He looks down at the floor. There's a long cord and it's leading to what I consider an under the stairs Harry Potter room. And he finds Meryl staring at the TV. Meryl says that he had to bring the TV in there because the kids were just glued to it and would not leave it alone.
Becoming obsessed. I mean, that's the word. He's hiding in a room.
Being obsessed. So he recaps that the UFOs look like they've been gone, like they've left, but they must be invisible or something like that, because the news has been replaying that a bird ran into an invisible wall and died instantly. He also starts to tell Graham that the crop circles might be a form of navigational mapping of some sort, but Graham just walks away from him.
Completely unfazed.
Mm-hmm. Per usual. So then we cut to Graham, who's back on the second floor again, but this time he's in a bathrobe. He must have taken a shower. And he hears his children in their room, and he goes to the door to find them both sitting on the bed with a tinfoil Smurf hat on each of them while they're reading a book. It's the same book.
Did you do that as a child?
Do what?
Were you influenced by this movie to make yourself a tinfoil hat?
No. Did you?
I don't remember, but I wouldn't be surprised if I did.
Oh, I love that. So Morgan just kind of glares at his father and says that the foil's to help prevent the aliens from reading their minds. And so Graham, he goes and he sits down on the bed and he's like, are these scientists even credible? And Morgan accuses him of not taking it seriously. And so then he's like, oh, no, I'm taking it seriously, very sarcastically. And he starts flipping through the book and they're seeing a variety of just stereotypical alien drawings of just giant heads and green men. And then all of a sudden they come across this very eerie image of what looks like their house, a spaceship flying away, and 3 bodies on fire on the ground. All of a sudden, the phone rings and they all jump. And he's like, you guys are being obsessed. Stop it. So Graham goes and he answers the phone and we just hear M. Night's voice, Father, and then some background noise, and then the line cuts. Graham decides that it's time to head out of the house because he needs to go find out why Ray called him. And then Bo and Morgan are still looking through a telescope up in their room. And Bo tells Morgan that she doesn't want him to die. And he's like, who said that I'm going to die? That's the end of that.
So creepy.
So then we find Graham standing on the front porch of a house and he's looking through the windows and he sees clear signs of a struggle. There are books everywhere, chairs turned over, tables turned over, and he's looking around and he can't figure out where Ray is. And then all of a sudden he turns around and he sees Ray just sitting idly in his SUV. If I experienced what we learn happened to Ray, I would not just be sitting idly in my SUV. Just waiting.
I know. What is up with these? Maybe they're like in shock.
I hope so.
Because it's definitely not a normal reaction.
No, not even close. So anyway, Graham walks up to Ray's SUV and he's talking to him through his passenger side window. And Ray explains that he wrote down Graham's number and he wanted to call for so long. But he just, as soon as he knew that one of them was in the house, that's when he ended up calling Graham. And of course, he keeps referring to him as father as well, because that's apparently his name. Because I think we actually hear Graham's name 3 times in this movie total.
Yeah.
So he goes into whatever happened the night of the accident, and he is so sorry for all the pain that he's caused. And Graham sees that Ray has packed up his SUV. And he asks him, like, where are you going? And Ray says that he heard that they don't like water. He once again apologizes for all the pain that he caused. And he warns Graham that he found one of them in the pantry and he locked him in there. And so then Ray just peels out of there. So now we flash back to Meryl asleep in the Harry Potter closet. And he wakes up to a new news broadcast coming from Brazil. This is a home video at a child's birthday party where everybody is kind of rushing, speaking very loudly, and they rush to a specific window. And outside this window, we see what looks like a driveway and some tall hedges. And the little boy is speaking in Portuguese. And then all of a sudden, I cannot fathom why he says this in English. He's just like, it's behind. And he's pointing down the driveway.
You know, it's for an American audience when it takes place in Brazil and then they feel the need to say a sentence in English. And then, of course, Meryl has to say vamonos or something like that.
Yes, which isn't even Portuguese.
Exactly.
He's like, vamonos, andale, vamonos.
Oh my gosh.
So as this home video camera zooms into the hedge, all of a sudden we see a very tall, I swear this thing's like 6'1.5", and very thin humanoid looking alien as he struts across the driveway looking like Bigfoot. Like he's just one arm out in front of the other one, looking at you like, what?
I always had to physically prepare myself for that scene.
See, that's not mine. Mine is the next one coming up.
Really?
Yeah. So Meryl jumps straight back towards the back of the Harry Potter closet and is just terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they replay it over and over and over again. So then he gets more comfortable with it.
Still need to pause it on that.
Yes. So then we're back to Graham inside of Ray's kitchen. I don't know how he got inside, is my question. Like, what happened? How did he get in there? Did he jimmy something? I don't know.
Who knows? Maybe he left the front door open.
Maybe. But what cracks me up is he goes into the kitchen. He is staring at the pantry, and you can see a shadow moving back and forth across the bottom of the door. And Graham suddenly decides that he's a cop from the 40s, and he starts telling this person, like, what was that?
I said, what was that bit? Did he like get it from a movie or?
That I could not tell you. If anybody knows, please let us know, because I have absolutely no idea. All of a sudden, he's just talking to the thing behind the door, and he's like, we've got all your friends loaded up in the paddy wagon, ready to go down to the station. I think this is one of the few times that we actually get facial expression from him as he rolls his eyes at himself.
Oh, yeah. And he gets really into it, too.
He does.
Don't waste your life away. Like,
I forgot about that.
He really did. He really got into the scene.
Oh, it's so funny. So Graham just continues to get closer and closer to the door. He's trying to see what's underneath the door. So he puts his face to the ground. He can't see anything. And then he looks around and he sees that there's a knife on the counter, and he uses the reflective surface of the knife underneath the door and still can't see anything. So Graham decides this is a lost cause. He gets up, he leaves, and as soon as he hits the edge of the kitchen, he turns right back around, gets on the floor, and then all of a sudden, 4 fingers of a hand launch at his face from underneath the door. That is what scared me when I first started watching this movie, is just that jump scare of those fingers just launching straight at his face.
Yeah, I always fast forward past that part.
Well, that explains.
I fast forward that part, and then also the part with Houdini.
Yeah, that part's so sad.
I fast forward those 2 parts because I don't like jump scares. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, I just skip through that. But yeah, that one's terrifying too.
So rather than just like get up and leave, because clearly the alien can't get past the door, apparently, he quickly grabs the knife that he dropped and he chops off 2 of the fingers, and a shriek reverberates out into the exterior landscape, and birds are flying everywhere. Now we see Graham getting home, and Morgan and Bo and Meryl are all sitting on the couch, and Meryl is now convinced to wear a foil hat as well. So Graham, he just kind of gives up and he slumps onto the stairs, and Meryl tells him that the alien skins change color. So that's why they couldn't see them the night of where they heard all the noise. They went to go find them outside. So then Graham asks Morgan, what does the book say if the aliens are hostile? Morgan explains that there are 2 different outcomes that could occur in the case that they're hostile. 1, they could just get the resources and leave, or 2, they're here to kill everybody. With that information, Graham tells them that he found one of them at Ray's house and that he felt like it intended to harm him. I'm very curious as to, fingers launching at you. No, it just wanted to shake your hand, sir.
I had this feeling that it...
It's saying, howdy do. How are you?
I know. Meanwhile, what's his face? M. Night's character, he literally had like blood on his hand. I know. Wasn't he like stabbed or something? Or he had blood coming out of his stomach.
Yeah, he had blood on his shirt.
Been an indication. Hey, maybe these things are not friendly.
Right. Well, with this, now Graham has decided that they're going to follow Ray's lead and go someplace with water. Morgan doesn't want to go someplace with water. He says that's stupid. He's never heard of that. And so then Graham is like, well, let's put it to a vote. And he says, who wants to go someplace near water? And him and Bo raise their hand. And then he says, who wants to stay here? Morgan and Meryl raise their hand. And then Graham says, well, my vote counts as 2 because I'm here supporting two parents.
What about the fact that he's the parent?
Right?
Why is he taking a vote? And like, I'm sorry, I would have been like, we're getting the F out of here. Everyone pack up the car. Like, oh my gosh.
What I'm trying to figure out is why did Morgan want to stay, you know?
Because that's where mom was.
Oh, there's that. That's true.
I guess.
So anyway, then Bo says, after Morgan says, that's bullshit. Bo's like, I'm changing my vote.
Meanwhile, Morgan's only read like one book.
I know.
And all of a sudden, he's an expert.
I know. He's got tinfoil on his hat. On his head. So it's decided that they're staying home because he's been outvoted. So the first things first is that it's time to go board up the windows and the doors. And this is where we find out from the news that from all the sightings, the aliens are showing up within a mile of crop circles. They go.
Like, at that point, why weren't they running? They're literally surrounded by crop circles. Maybe this isn't the best place.
Right? It's like, you don't even have to go to water. You just have to leave the mile radius.
Leave the crop circles.
You're fine then. Go stay at a friend's house.
Oh my gosh, right?
So after they've boarded up several of the windows and doors, they realize they don't have enough boards for all of the windows. So then they decide that they're just going to board up the bedroom doors and stay in the middle of the house. And what cracks me up about boarding up the bedroom doors is that they're boarding them up from the outside. So you can still open the door.
Yeah. I didn't understand why the back door, I'm pretty sure, and the front door only had one board.
I know.
They were going to be saying, if that was their main place, why was there only one board on the front door?
All I know is it was ridiculous.
Oh my God.
So finally, they decide, okay, it's time for dinner. I'm hungry now. So Meryl asks, what does everybody want for dinner? Bo says she wants spaghetti. Morgan says he wants waffles and mashed potatoes. What an odd combination.
I mean, if it's your last meal, go wild. I everything that they said sounded amazing. I'm like, I'd eat that.
Meryl says that I'll eat chicken teriyaki. Graham says that he wants a bacon cheeseburger with extra bacon.
He's go wild. He's like, I'm going extra bacon. I'm going bad.
That's right. He did say that.
I'm going to go against my doctor's orders and get the extra bacon.
It's like, this could be my last night. Cholesterol be damned.
There you go.
Do you have an idea as to what your last dinner, quote unquote, would be in this scenario?
Oh my God. I would not pick one thing.
I know. That's the hardest thing.
Exactly. Like, how do you pick one thing? I'd want a little bit of everything. So I would hope I would be with a bunch of people and we could just have a potluck style.
There we go. All right, Celeste. End of the world. We're having a potluck.
Everybody bring something different.
I love it. It's going to be like Who Feast, you know, right? Just at the end of the world. It's fine.
We'll end it on a good note.
So after they've all decided what to eat for dinner, we change to seeing the aftermath of them making all this food and all of four of them at the kitchen or the dining room table. You know, and then Morgan suggests that they say a prayer and Graham says no. Morgan then says he hates him for letting mom die. Bo cries. Nobody starts eating. So Graham's being a dick and he decides that he's going to grab food off of everybody's plate and start shoving it in his mouth until he completely breaks down. Then Morgan goes to hug him. Bo gets up and hugs him. And my favorite part is the fact that Graham all of a sudden reaches out to Meryl, grabs him by the shirt collar and pulls him in. Then we pan back and we see the baby monitor on one of the kitchen counters and we start to hear these alien whale calls that we heard before. And everybody leaves the table.
All that food for nothing.
I know. Only Graham had like 2 bites.
I was like, why did they not like take that down with them?
Right.
to the basement or wherever they went, I would have grabbed a plate and took it with me.
Especially since they don't even actually go down to the basement yet. What they do is they start pounding in more boards because they're like, we're not done yet. Fuck.
Oh, yeah, they do. At that point, that's when they're like, oh, yeah, maybe we should finish boarding up our house.
And what's even more bizarre is that Graham decides he's going to take this crucial time to tell Bo how she was born.
Oh, yeah.
Meryl's just pounding away. Graham is like,
not of the essence. I think this is the best time to share this with you guys.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, she didn't cry when she was born. She had the most beautiful eyes. All the nurses gawked at her beautiful eyes, and she just smiled at her mama. So finally, all the doors are done, and they retreat downstairs. Mm-hmm. And this is where they start to hear a bunch of sounds. So they just hear a cacophony of sounds. First, they hear Isabel. Poor Isabel. They remember that they forgot her.
Oh my goodness.
They hear her barking.
They should not have dogs.
No, clearly they're not responsible.
They should not be dog owners.
So Isabel is barking, and then she whimpers, and then you can hear like she's in pain, and then she completely goes silent.
Yeah. Oh, my heart.
You don't even see it. You just know that it's awful.
You just know. You just know. Like today, if this movie was made today, people would hate this film.
Oh, I know.
People would learn that a dog died or two dogs die, and they'd be like, nope, I'm not going to go watch it. I refuse.
Oh, did you know that people feel worse about dogs dying in movies than they do like children dying in movies?
I believe it. Because I don't know what it is, but like my heart will literally break if a dog dies in a film.
Yeah.
And then if a person, I'm like,
He had it coming.
Exactly.
All of a sudden you break out into the cell block tango. He had it coming.
Yeah, pretty much.
So anyway, we start to hear other sounds. Sounds like somebody's jogging around the porch around the house. Wind chimes are going nuts. And then they start to hear crashing into the walls and doors. And they realize that they're just trying to find out where the soft spots are, essentially. But then all of a sudden they hear somebody launch onto the roof again. Here come those high jump skills. Mm-hmm. And then they hear another crash. And this is when Graham takes the time at this crucial moment to tell Morgan about the day that he was born.
Oh, gosh. After Meryl literally says, they're in the house.
Right.
And he proceeds to tell his story.
Not only that, this story is terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
It is traumatizing. Like, Bo's was sweet. Sure. Yeah. Morgan's, they're like, your mama almost died.
I know. That would not make me feel better.
No. And you want to know a fun fact?
What?
These two stories of how his children were born are the actual stories of how M. Night's children were born.
Really?
Yes.
That's scary.
I know. I don't know in what order, but supposedly.
No, regardless. So he has two children then?
Yeah. Yeah. He's helping one of his daughter, I can't remember what her name is, direct a film currently, I suppose, in this year, 2023.
Ooh,
so
I would love to watch that.
Yeah. We will find out. They, as you mentioned, they hear crashes. Meryl's like, they're inside the house. And then they all start to look up to the second floor and see that they have left an attic hatch unboarded.
Yep.
We don't even see anything come from this attic. We just know that is bad news bears.
Yep.
So then they decide to retreat to the cellar. These aliens must be very fast because, as I mentioned, we did not see them at all. We didn't see the attic open at all. They just retreat down to the cellar. And then all of a sudden, Graham is up against the door and they are banging against this door.
Because he just walked down so casually again, as he does, just casually stepped down the stairs. And then literally, as soon as he closed the door, he was having to lean against it to freaking, I'm like, what? Like, no urgency in this man.
None whatsoever. Graham is just cool as a cucumber. Cool as a cucumber. He does not care.
But like, I guess if you think about it, that might be a good quality to have, I guess. Because
I don't know. You can be calm, but still have some urgency to you.
True. Yeah, I guess that's true.
So while Graham is up against this door, bracing against it like his life depends on it for once, he can't lock it. There's no lock to this door.
Apparently not. I think I've been in like a basement like once or twice, so I don't know what they're supposed to look like or do.
There is nothing scarier than a basement and an attic. You are in either one of those, you are asking to get haunted or killed.
Yeah, I never go in my attics.
I don't even know if I can open my attic, and I don't want to find out. Honestly.
Oh no. My mom and I thought that there was something in our attic once.
Oh no.
We called someone, like a family member, I think it was my uncle, to take a look for us because we refused to go up. But nope, I'm good.
So while Graham is up against this door, Merrill is looking everywhere for something to wedge up against this door. He's looking on the shelves, and finally at the very top of the shelf, he finds a pickaxe. And as he grabs it, he conveniently shatters the only light bulb that is in this basement.
He had to like pull like horizontally. Like he went straight out because like it was just such a weird way to go.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
So it's dark and we just hear a scuttle. And then all of a sudden Morgan finds a flashlight and he points it at the door. Both men are now wedged up against this door. They're holding it closed, but they've used the pickaxe without killing anybody to lock the door. They finally start to back away. And that's when they start to hear something just ram straight into this door. But it's not enough to actually break the door. That's when they realize these aliens, they're very smart. They're very good at problem solving. And they're just making sounds to distract them as they try and find a way into the cellar.
I feel like that door looked flimsy. Enough of them. Like two of them should have been able to take it down. That looked like an old flimsy door.
Not only that, like it's just being held up by one pickaxe.
It's just like there, yeah.
So this is when Graham's like, this used to be a coal cellar. They used to shovel down coal into the cellar. And
I don't know what that means. Like, what? When he said that, I'm like, what?
All you need to know is that Meryl and Graham each grab a flashlight and they walk around the perimeter of the room and they're like, I can feel cool air. I can feel it too. And then they meet in the middle. And Morgan is conveniently just standing in front of a grate.
Of course he is.
And he looks at them and he's like, what? And of course, the grate suddenly comes alive with a camouflaged hand, lifts off the grate and grabs Morgan by the shirt.
Oh, cringe. So gross.
The two men lunge into action. They drop the flashlights and all we hear are noise and there are lights going in every direction. It calms down after a minute. Bo grabs the flashlight off of the floor and she points it at Meryl, who's in front of the grate, but he is stacked bags of grain in front of this grate. And the best part is that a can of like tomatoes just suddenly rolls on the floor and he grabs it and he puts it straight on top.
Cherry on top.
This will do it. This is really going to keep them out.
Final touch.
She takes the flashlight and she points it towards Graham and Morgan is struggling to breathe really hard. And Graham is holding him while they're sitting on the floor. And he's like, we forgot his inhaler.
Like how though?
That kid had overalls on.
Yeah, he had plenty of places to put it. He had pockets for days. I mean, I don't have asthma or anything like that, but like, I would imagine that like you constantly have those things with you at all times.
Yeah. I had a couple friends who had asthma and they always had their inhaler.
Right. Those kids, man.
So as Morgan is struggling to breathe, Graham gives God a mild threat. He's like, don't you do this to me again. And Morgan's breathing finally slows down and he's starting to kind of become stable, if you will. And Meryl's like, we need to conserve the batteries in these flashlights. So they turn off the flashlights. They're like, be damned, we're going to sit in darkness. Here's where we have another flashback to the night of the accident. Caroline explains that Colleen is pinned to a tree and that her lower half is severed. She won't be awake for too much longer, and that this is the last time Graham will be able to talk to his wife. He's walking down the road towards his wife, and he sees Ray sitting on a curb, essentially wrapped in a blanket, and Ray's trying to apologize. But that's when Graham wakes up to light Meryl in his face in a radio broadcast. Meryl is standing over him, and he says that he found the replacement bulbs and that the aliens suddenly just decided to retreat. Meryl then starts to lecture Graham about his lack of faith. He's like, what I saw last night, I better not ever see that again. And then he kind of gives a reluctant nod, and they look over at Morgan, who is in the fetal position on this dirt ground, still struggling to breathe.
It's his own fault.
He clearly needs a hospital, but they're like, nah, his medicine will do. They decide that before they open the door, even though they know that the aliens have retreated from the surrounding areas, they're like, we're going to listen to the baby monitor. We couldn't remember to grab food, but we remembered to grab the baby monitor. After nothing comes on the baby monitor, they're like, yeah, that works. They open up the door, and Meryl goes upstairs and checks around to see if there's any trouble. He comes back.
Take a weapon?
Yeah, he took something, but I couldn't see what it was.
Oh, okay. I'm like, did he just walk up there like willy-nilly?
He had something that looked like a bat, but it wasn't a bat. I don't know what it was. So he comes back. He says it's all clear. And then the rest of them follow back up the stairs. Graham tells Meryl that he needs to grab Morgan's meds and an EpiPen. Then Graham puts Morgan down on the couch, and Bo comes back into frame. She's just been watching the TV, and she says that the people on the TV are basically doing the pelvic thrust.
Pretty much, yep.
She's very cute about it, though. So Graham turns to Morgan, and he's like, would you like to see them do this? And Morgan gives him, yeah, he gives him just like a slight nod. And so Graham goes to get the TV, brings it back into the living room. And this is where we see a reflection of the alien carrying Morgan and the TV. And Bo screams. Meryl enters back into the scene, and then he promptly drops Morgan's medicine. We close in on the alien. We kind of pan down it a little bit, but not enough that it's actually like clear to see the alien all that well. Like you can tell that it's an alien, but it's not like absolutely vivid. And we focus in on its hand, and we see that it is missing 2 fingers. So now we know that aliens know what revenge is, and it is a dish best served cold.
I love how like he said that they left their wounded behind.
Right.
I'm like, how sad. All he's missing is 2 fingers, and they deemed him as useless.
We don't know what those 2 fingers did, you know?
True.
Maybe they powered, his spacecraft or something like that. Like it's kind of like a bowling ball. You need all your fingers in order to use it.
I guess. Poor guy.
So this menacing alien is just carrying Morgan in one hand in one arm and just kind of rotating back and forth. And then a barb comes out of its wrist, and then the camera closes in on Graham's face. And this is the most appropriate time to have a flashback.
Yep.
Graham, in this flashback back to the night of the accident, he finally reaches Colleen, and we learn what her last words were. She has a brief message for everybody, and this also includes the swing away Meryl. Then we flash forward to the night that Graham and Meryl had the conversation about being lucky or whether or not things are coincidences. And then we're back into the present. Graham scans the room, and he sees Meryl's baseball on the wall. Now, I can't figure out why, if your brother just moved in with you during this time and he lives in like a separate house, essentially on your property, why his baseball bat is in your living room, mounted to the wall.
Super proud brother, I guess. Who knows? I think that was Colleen's doing.
Maybe. It must be. She was so proud of him. So anyway, Graham, he looks at Meryl and he says, swing away, Meryl. And what I love about Joaquin Phoenix is that he has so much emotion on his face. He is clearly very confused.
I feel like that's just his face. attractive man, but I feel like he always has a confused look on his face.
So Meryl goes and he sees the bat finally, and he grabs the bat. And that's when he decides to launch at the alien with the bat and gives him a good swing to the kidneys. The alien drops Morgan. Graham scoops him up, as well as the medicine that Meryl dropped, and him and Bo hightail it onto the lawn. Meryl continues to knock the shit out of this alien with a baseball bat, and he hits him into some furniture, which tips over a glass of water, which then trickles onto the alien, and the alien skin begins to sizzle.
Bo saves the day. With her little pick.
After Bo, Graham, and Morgan get out of the house, Bo looks back inside of the house, and we see an outside view looking in at Meryl and the bat taking on this alien. He then starts swinging at the glasses of water and spraying both glass and water into the face of this alien. And he just continues to beat this alien senseless until he gives it one last swing, knocking it into even more furniture, which then causes a Niagara Falls of water glasses. Like, all we see is just water coming down as if this alien is being waterboarded.
Yeah. I was like, dang.
So then we return to the reflection of the TV, and we see the alien's chest eventually stop moving. And the bat is completely cracked in half. And eventually Meryl goes outside to join the others. This point is where we find the most emotion on Mel Gibson's face.
Yeah.
Mel Gibson
for this scene.
He did. He saved it all for the very end. He is so upset. Meryl comes even remotely close to Morgan, and he's like, get back. Graham is now in like a distant state. He starts spouting off theories as to why everything has happened for a reason. Morgan's lungs were closed. The poison didn't get in. Morgan's lungs were closed. This is why he has asthma. What a weird reason for asthma. So that way an alien could eventually come down, try and poison you, but it wouldn't get in. Seems logical. It's a very tense moment, mostly because Graham is screaming at everybody and showing emotion for the first time ever, and nobody knows what to do with it. And then Morgan finally comes to, and he asks if somebody saved him. Graham takes the biggest deep breath. So the family rejoices, essentially. They all are much more at calm. And then the camera pans out and back to the second story of the house that's looking over the yard and starts to go inside the house. It's scanning the second floor. When we first saw the boards all over the doors, then it starts to change and evolve. And all of a sudden we see snow outside. And then we land in Graham's room. Graham is getting dressed. And then he turns around and we can see the indication that he's now become a reverend again. The end.
All it took was an alien invasion.
To restore faith.
Exactly.
What I love is, so I showed Richard, my husband, this movie. And he's like, were you just trying to show me a movie about religion?
Wait,
and I hadn't even realized it.
Seen it before?
He had it. No.
Billy hasn't either. I was watching it and he came in during like one of the final scenes and he had like said he hadn't seen it or something, or he had recognized it. And he's like, oh, I recognized it from the Scary Movie. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me?
That'll do it. That'll do it.
I'm like, oh my God.
Is there anything that I missed?
No, it's not possible. No,
Perfect.
I think we got it. I think.
So if you were to lean towards either the 10 out of 10 rating or the 1 out of 10 rating that we mentioned earlier, where are you at?
Oh, I already knew coming into it closer to the 10 out of 10 rating. I love this movie.
I do too. It's an iconic movie. Don't get me wrong. Mel Gibson can't act in it for his life. I think that there are some not great themes from it, you know, like there are 2 women in this movie. I guess 3 if you count Colleen.
Poor Colleen. Yeah.
Nobody talks to each other. So it does not pass the Bechdel test, if you've ever heard of that.
Oh, yeah. To be fair, there's only like 5 people in this whole movie.
This is true. This is true.
But,
so there's that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I lean closer to the 10 out of 10. If I were to rate it, I'd probably rate it a 7. I know that it's problematic and it's just kind of hilarious. But it has a safe place in my heart.
It does. Yes, it always will.
So we did it.
Yay! How exciting.
Thank you all for listening to our first episode of Caffeinated Flicks. We will have more to come and hopefully everybody enjoys. Catch you on the flip side.
Did you just say catch you on the flick side?
No, but that's awesome. I like that.
I'm like, that was so clever.
Catch you on the flick side.